this is Tyler. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining me on this journey and adventure. In this episode, we'll move beyond the theory of meaning into a more practical application: how to build a life of well being, resilience, and fulfillment. Every philosophy of life, every ethical system, and every self improvement framework ultimately boils down to a single question: what is the best way to live? The answer is not found in rule following, rigid morality, or any single virtue applied indiscriminately, at least the way I see it. Instead, it's found in wisdom, the ability to apply the right virtue to the right problem at the right time. Wisdom is not just like the other virtues, it is the virtue, and it's the only virtue that's always better with more of it. Every other virtue, say kindness, courage, discipline, honesty, and love, becomes destructive when it's taken to an extreme or applied in the wrong context. Too much courage? Reckless foolishness. Too much kindness? You're a doormat. Too much honesty? Brutality and cruelty. Too much discipline? Rigid obsession and OCD. Too much love? Oedipal mother. Wisdom and wisdom alone sits at the top of the hierarchy, guiding all other virtues. It determines when, how, and what extent each virtue should be applied. Without wisdom, even noble virtues can lead to disaster. And yet, wisdom is in short supply in our modern world. We have more access to information than ever before, but we're no wiser for it. Instead, we're drowning in data, lost in ideological battles, and paralyzed by constant distraction, outrage, and misinformation. That's why wisdom is more important now than any other point in history. It's a primary antidote to chaos, confusion, and deception. And if we want to build a meaningful life, one that is resilient, fulfilling, and purpose driven, wisdom must be our foundation, and it must be at the top of the hierarchy. So let's go over the history of wisdom. Where did wisdom come from? Wisdom's about as old as human survival itself. Before civilization, before philosophy, before science, our ancestors had to make life or death decisions every single day. Those who made foolish choices died. Those who were wise enough to navigate danger, cooperation, and competition survived and passed on their instincts. Wisdom then is a evolved trait. It's why elders were revered in ancient societies, not for their physical strength, but for their ability to see patterns, predict consequences, and guide the next generation. The idea of wisdom as the highest virtue is not new. The ancient Greeks laid the foundation for our understanding of wisdom, defining it as both a practical skill and a moral ideal. Unlike modern education, which prioritizes knowledge and intelligence, the Greeks saw wisdom as the ability to live well, to navigate life's uncertainties with discernment, adaptability, and moral clarity. The Greeks distinguished between two types of wisdom. There was Sophia, or theoretical wisdom, which is the pursuit of universal truths, philosophy, and deep understanding. People like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who sought to uncover timeless principles of reality, ethics, and logic. And then they also had phronesis, which is practical wisdom. And this is the ability to apply knowledge effectively in real life situations. It's situational intelligence, knowing when to act, when to wait, and how to adapt. Both forms of wisdom were seen as necessary for a well lived life. Sophia helps us understand the world, while phronesis helps us navigate the world. The Greek philosopher Socrates famously declared, "The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing." And I think this intellectual humility is the key to wisdom. Socrates understood that certainty is an illusion, that true wisdom comes from questioning, refining, and continuously learning rather than clinging to rigid beliefs. The idea is even more relevant today, where false certainty, ideological rigidity, and overconfidence dominate public discourse. Socratic wisdom teaches us that the first step to wisdom is admitting our limitations and remaining open to growth. Aristotle, on the other hand, placed wisdom at the pinnacle of human virtues, arguing that it was the guiding force behind all ethical decision making. And I agree. For Aristotle, wisdom was not just intellectual, it was moral and practical. It was the ability to balance virtues, applying the right one at the right time. This golden mean, the balance between extremes, became a foundational idea in ethics, reinforcing why wisdom must guide all other virtues. In the past, wisdom was passed down through tradition, mentorship, and lived experience. Today, we're bombarded with an endless stream of information, much of it misleading, biased, or outright false. The modern world rewards impulsivity over reflection, reaction over contemplation, and outrage over understanding. Without wisdom, we fall into emotional manipulation, ideological extremism, short term thinking, and regret and stagnation. Wisdom is the main defense against these traps. And if we fail to cultivate wisdom, we will continue to make poor choices, undermine our own happiness, and be manipulated by forces beyond our control. The Greek perspective on wisdom is exactly what we need today. In a world that prioritizes raw intelligence, ideological certainty, and emotional reactivity, we have forgotten the art of discernment. We've forgotten wisdom. As we navigate an era of information overload, social division, and existential uncertainty, returning to Greek wisdom can help us regain clarity, perspective, and resilience. Because in the end, wisdom is not about what you know, it's about how well you live. For most of human history, the pursuit of a good life was guided by philosophy, religion, and cultural traditions. The Stoics, Buddhists, and other ancient thinkers intuited that gratitude, mindfulness, social connection, and purpose were essential for well being. However, it wasn't until modern psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics that these practices were empirically studied and validated. In the last few decades, positive psychology researchers have measured the effects of these ancient practices, confirming what wisdom has long suspected. Happiness and fulfillment are not about luck or external circumstances, but about daily habits and mental frameworks. Here are my 11 modern science practices, habits, and frameworks for rediscovering the pillars of well being. The first is gratitude. Gratitude counteracts the brain's negativity bias, which makes us more likely to dwell on problems rather than blessings. Regularly practicing gratitude rewires the brain towards optimism, which promotes well being. Gratitude has deep roots in philosophy and religion, whether that's Stoicism, Buddhism, or Christianity and Islam. Gratitude helps us navigate life, whether that's contemplating the loss of what we love to appreciate life more deeply, whether that's having gratitude as a way to reduce craving and cultivate contentment, or whether that's emphasizing gratitude as a daily practice to counteract suffering and increase faith. So, science says that increasing happiness by rewiring the brain helps us focus on positive experiences. It reduces stress and anxiety, and it lowers cortisol levels. And it strengthens relationships because people who express gratitude build deeper social connections. So, how can you cultivate gratitude? Well, there's three ways that are really simple. One is gratitude journaling. The other is gratitude reflection, or just taking a moment to appreciate the good moments in your day. And the final thing is just expressing thanks. Telling people how much you appreciate them strengthens relationships and it builds your own internal system. Gratitude is a habit that trains your mind to focus on abundance rather than scarcity. The next virtue is savoring. Savoring is the art of slowing down and fully immersing in an experience, allowing us to feel more joy and more meaning in the present. It comes from Epicurean philosophy and Zen Buddhism, where Epicurus believed that pleasure was found in small, simple joys rather than indulgence, and Buddhism brought us mindfulness in order to engage fully in the present moment. Now, science says that people who practice savoring report higher life satisfaction. It amplifies our joy and it rewards our positive experiences. It combats hedonic adaptation or our tendency to take things for granted. So you can practice savoring by mindful eating. And rather than rushing through your meals, appreciating each bite or reliving positive memories, recalling something happy to reinforce positivity or appreciating small joys, just taking the time to enjoy a sunrise, a cup of coffee, or a conversation. Savoring turns ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences, reinforcing the beauty of life. Next, we have kindness. Kindness is biological. By helping others, it releases oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, which enhances well being for both the giver and the receiver. It comes from Confucianism, Christianity, and Buddhism, where being kind is showing others that we either serve God or we're practicing loving kindness. Science says that kindness triggers the brain's reward system. It increases happiness. Acts of service reduce depression and loneliness by focusing on others rather than focusing on ourselves. And kindness creates social bonds, fostering well being for both the giver and the receiver. So, how can you cultivate kindness? Well, one, just perform random acts of kindness. Small gestures like paying for a stranger's coffee or holding the door open make us happier. You can do volunteering, engage in something that aligns with your values, or you can just practice active compassion, which is instead of judging, try to understand where others are coming from. When we contribute to others' well being, our own sense of purpose and connection deepens. Our next virtue is social connection. Humans are wired for connection. Loneliness is one of the great predictors of mental and physical decline. Aristotle first coined humans as social animals who thrive in community. Tribal cultures have known this for forever because survival depends on deep social bonds in the tribe and the family. Science says that strong relationships predict happiness more than wealth or success. Loneliness is as damaging as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Social support enhances that resilience during stress and hardship. So, how can you strengthen social bonds? Well, one, making time for loved ones, whether that's a meetup, a call, or even just family dinners. But listen deeply. Focus on understanding rather than waiting to respond. And certainly leave your technology behind. Build your community. Join a group or a club or an organization that aligns with your interests and forge social relationships because having relationships is critical to our well being, and the quality of our relationships determines the quality of our lives. The next topic I want to cover is exercise. Now, exercise, it's a critical keystone habit that positively impacts nearly every domain of life, from cognitive function to mood regulation. Exercise has been with us pretty much for forever, but ancient Greece and the Olympic Games really emphasized physical vitality as part of the good life. Dancing and hunting and physical activities were integrated into daily life in each of our tribes and our heritage of where we came from. Science says that exercise boosts mood by increasing dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. It reduces risk of depression and anxiety, and it enhances brain function and memory. It matters because it reduces stress, anxiety, and depression. It increases focus, energy, and resilience, and it strengthens the mind and the body. It's incredible. This simple task that we can just move every day engage in some sort of energetic activity, and finding activities that we enjoy is a vehicle for experiencing life in order to increase our well being. Just getting out of your house and taking a walk daily or twice daily has the potential to increase your mood dramatically. Our next area is sleep. Without quality sleep, everyone suffers. Sleep deprivation impairs memory, focus, emotional stability, and resilience. And again, sleep's been with us for forever, so there's nothing new here. But prioritizing sleep is something that is critical for bringing rest and rejuvenation and to provide mental clarity. Science says that when we lack sleep, it weakens our emotional regulation and it increases our stress. Deep sleep enhances memory consolidation and problem solving, and poor sleep is linked to higher risk of mental illness and heart disease. So, how can you optimize sleep? Well, first, just maintain a regular sleep cycle. Go to bed and wake up at consistent times, if you can. I recognize that not everyone is going to be able to do this, but these are the things that will really help to ensure that sleep provides you with the greatest well being. Limit screens before bed. Blue light suppresses melatonin production. And create a relaxing bedtime routine. Reading, deep breathing, warm baths signal to the brain to wind down. My evening routine regularly involves stepping into our sauna in order to wind down from the day, and it prepares my body for sleep. Good sleep is non negotiable for well being. It's something that we all need to take, and it's something that we need to prioritize more in today's society. Next, we have mindfulness and meditation. Now, mindfulness is the ability to fully engage with the present moment without judgment. It reduces stress, anxiety, and mental clutter, but it's not something that you attain. It's something that you essentially let go of in the same way that a fist can only not become a fist when you let go of it. Now, mindfulness and meditation predominantly come from Eastern traditions, but Stoicism also focused on negative visualization and mental training. And it's been practiced for thousands of years to cultivate presence and inner peace. In modern studies, meditation has been proven to reduce stress and rewire the brain for resilience. Meditation enhances focus, patience, and emotional regulation, and it improves self awareness and well being by developing more gray matter in our prefrontal cortex. And it's really simple to cultivate. Just take deep, intentional breaths throughout the day and be aware. Even just 5 to 10 minutes daily strengthens attention and emotional regulation. And focusing on one thing at a time instead of multitasking enables us to become more present, where we reduce suffering and increase joy. For me, I've grown into meditation. And in fact, I'm not one of those people who sits around and meditates for a very long time. It's more that throughout my day, I find opportunities to come back into focus in order to have mindfulness over where I am and what I'm doing. And I'm grateful for those moments because it snaps back into focus things about my life that I can be grateful for. Our next category is meaningful work. Work that's not just about money. It's about contribution, mastery, and purpose. Again, work's been with us for forever. And whether that's a calling or just survival, or tapping into our personal strengths, work is a source of meaning. Science says that people who find purpose in their work are happier and healthier. Meaningful work reduces burnout and increases motivation, and purpose driven careers enhance long term fulfillment. But how can you do that? Well, one is to find work that aligns with your strengths and your values. Choose something that resonates with you and your deeper purpose, and seek out work that enables you to become the best version of yourself. Even in mundane jobs, however, you can have meaning if you view it through a lens of service and excellence. You can use work as the opportunity to challenge yourself to improve, regardless of the job title and regardless of the function. Purposeful work is about engagement, the challenge and the opportunity of the tasks that are presented in front of you, and contribution with your teammates. Work can be a substantial part of your well being, but the way that you see it is going to be critical to your well being. Next, we have avoiding destructive habits. The biggest obstacles to flourishing are the behaviors that drain energy and meaning from our life. Ancient wisdom, including Stoicism and Buddhism, emphasize the dangers of excess, attachment, and resentment. Aristotle warned against indulgence in pleasures that lead to dependency, advocating for moderation as the path to virtue. And religious and philosophical traditions across cultures highlight forgiveness and letting go of anger as essential for well being. Avoiding destructive habits is critical for continuing to walk a life well lived. Science says that chronic stress and negativity increase cortisol levels, leading to long term physical and mental health deterioration. Addictions, likewise, reduce the ability to experience genuine satisfaction from normal life activities. And finally, we know many times that something that we're doing is destructive to our own health, and yet we choose that anyway. Just recognizing that you have destructive habits and then trying to find a way to cue them into something that is more positive will have a life changing effect on your life. If you make it harder for your destructive habits to kick in by physically separating yourself from them, you can make it harder for them to trigger. If you reduce artificial stimulation, you can reset your brain's natural reward system. If you limit your doom scrolling or the amount of time that you're spending online or in social media, you can limit your exposure to negativity and reset your brain's perspective on the world. And by cutting toxic behaviors, we free space for what truly matters and we renormalize the way that we perceive the world. Our next area is engaging in meaningful activities. So, beyond work, play, curiosity, and creativity are also essential for fulfillment. Science says that engaging in creative and playful activities increases dopamine and enhances overall cognitive flexibility. Flow states, where we are fully immersed in meaningful activities, lead to higher happiness and reduced anxiety. And social play and shared creative endeavors strengthen relationships and improve emotional resilience. You can do this in your normal life, whether that's engaging in hobbies, laughing and having fun, or just exploring and experimenting. Because a life without play and curiosity is one that becomes rigid and joyless. And what's odd is that I see so many adults who think that play is just for kids. I think play is probably one of the most important things that we have in our modern society. And it's something that everyone needs in their life, not just kids. It's something that adults need as well. Our next category is psychological resilience. True resilience comes from facing challenges head on and taking responsibility for our lives. Science says that resilience is not innate, but developed through repeated exposure to controlled stress and challenges. Responsibility taking increases our self efficacy, improving long term well being and decreasing feelings of helplessness. Structured habits such as discipline and routines create stability, lowering anxiety and increasing personal agency. You can develop resilience by having discipline. Just making small, consistent actions helps shape our character and our habits. Embrace discomfort because growth is going to come from outside of our comfort zones. And finally, take responsibility. If we take responsibility for our actions, then meaning arises from that. When we embrace challenges, we forge inner strength and purpose. And while wisdom serves as the master virtue that guides a flourishing life, these 11 practices lead to well being. I want to pivot slightly here and talk about awe. So, what is awe? Awe is a deep emotional response to the vastness, whether physical, intellectual, or spiritual, that forces us to reconsider our place in the universe. It's the feeling we get when standing before a towering mountain, staring into the cosmos, or hearing a piece of music that stirs something primal within us. Awe often emerges in two key ways, whether that's perceptual awe or conceptual awe. Perceptual awe is triggered by nature, art, music, or vast structures that overwhelm our senses, like the Milky Way. Conceptual awe, on the other hand, is triggered by profound ideas, realizations, or encounters with the infinite. And awe matters for well being because it's a transformative experience that reshapes our perception of reality and enhances our psychological health. It diminishes the ego, increases pro social behavior, and expands our time perception. Modern psychology has confirmed what ancient traditions have long suggested, that awe alters our cognitive and emotional landscape. Using fMRI scans, we can see that awe activates areas of the brain associated with self transcendence and interconnectedness. Our default mode network is responsible for self referential thinking and quiets down, allowing for a greater sense of openness when we focus on awe. Studies show that regular experiences of awe reduce inflammation, lower stress, and improve overall well being. Awe's been linked to reduced cytokine levels, meaning it has real physiological effects that boost health and longevity. Awe increases altruism by shifting focus away from ourself and towards a larger collective. Next, I want to focus on mystical experiences and how awe ties into them. Throughout human history, mystical experiences have served as turning points in the lives of individuals and the collective consciousness of societies. Such encounters are documented across cultures and epics, where the ordinary fabric of reality seems to dissolve, revealing a deeper, ineffable truth. In the Bible, these experiences are vividly recounted, whether that's Moses encountering a burning bush that speaks with divine authority, Paul's life irreversibly altered by a blinding light on the road to Damascus, or Ezekiel, who sees celestial wheels that challenge the limits of human comprehension. These events, far from being mere allegories, have long been interpreted as genuine windows into the divine. At the same time, modern scientific inquiry has begun to offer explanations. In our modern era, psychedelic substances, meditation practices, and other techniques have been shown to induce states of awe and mystical insight, offering measurable changes in the brain. For example, research into the brain's default mode network reveals that during these states, the normal sense of self dissipates, allowing individuals to experience a unity with the world. This phenomenon resonates with the biblical descriptions of ego dissolution and the overwhelming sense of oneness reported by mystics across time. In this section, we'll explore these diverse accounts and theories, reflecting on how awe remains one of the most transformative and enigmatic aspects of the human experience. Let's start with Moses and the burning bush. This is one of the most iconic mystical encounters in the Bible, and it's found in Exodus 3, where Moses encounters a bush that burns without being consumed. Now, traditional readings emphasize the divine calling, the manifestations of God's presence, and the transformation of Moses' life from a shepherd to a leader. Yet I posit that natural factors might have contributed to the intensity of this experience. I propose a hypothesis that says that naturally occurring methane could have been found in deep gas seeps and sometimes mixed with a small amount of propane, and it could have been responsible for the phenomenon described in Exodus. In regions like the Sinai Peninsula, Methane gas naturally escapes from the earth. When it encounters an ignition source, it burns a vivid flame, yet under circumstances may not consume the surrounding vegetation. This could explain the biblical account of the burning bush, where the fire is seen, yet the bush remains unharmed. While this hypothesis does not fully capture the spiritual significance of the event, it illustrates how a naturally scientific explanation phenomenon might have been interpreted as a miraculous counter in ancient times, and how Moses' conscious state was altered due to the experience of inhaling the methane gas. Another seminal event in biblical history is Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus, recorded in Acts 9. Traditional interpretations emphasize that this was a moment of divine intervention, a sudden, blinding light, and a powerful voice that redirected Paul's life from persecutor to prophet. However, what natural causes might have contributed to the intensity of this experience? So, a hypothesis that I posit is that Paul could have experienced a neurological event, such as a temporal lobe epileptic seizure, which can produce sudden, overwhelming sensory phenomena, including intense flashes of light and auditory hallucinations. It's conceivable that such an episode might occur to someone of Paul's age, altering one's consciousness in a way that feels nothing short of miraculous. Just as the burning bush might be explained by naturally occurring methane gas igniting in a specific environment, Paul's dramatic encounter could be seen as the result of his brain entering a state of heightened neurochemical activity, one that temporarily suspends his usual sense of self and opened him up to a transformative experience. And again, while this explanation does not detract from the profound impact his conversion had on his life and on history, it illustrates a fascinating intersection between biology and spirituality, suggesting that the human brain can, under certain circumstances, give rise to experiences that we have long regarded as purely supernatural. Finally, I want to talk about Ezekiel and the celestial vision. So, the prophetic visions of Ezekiel from chapter 1 provide another rich example of mystical encounter that has puzzled and inspired both religious believers and modern scholars alike. In his vision, Ezekiel describes a startling otherworldly scene with swirling wheels within wheels, brilliant radiant creatures with multiple faces and wings, and a deafening harmonious sound that evokes the rush of mighty waters. Perhaps Ezekiel's intense experience might have been chemically induced, perhaps through the consumption or inhalation of naturally occurring psychedelic substance. In his view, the vivid, swirling wheels, the radiant, multifaceted creatures, and the overwhelming sense of the divine presence described in chapter 1 could result from an altered state of consciousness triggered by a psychoactive compound present in his environment. Similar to how modern psychedelics, such as psilocybin or DMT, can lead to profound experiences marked by ego dissolution and sensory overload. It's conceivable that Ezekiel's perceptions were dramatically transformed by such a substance. And while this hypothesis is rather speculative, it is a possibility. It provides a provocative lens through which we can re examine these ancient mystical encounters and consider the possibility that natural, chemically induced states may have contributed to what was recorded as divine revelation. So let's pull that thread a little bit more and talk about modern scientific perspectives on mystical experiences. In recent years, a resurgence in the interest of psychedelic research has shed new light on mystical experiences. Substances like psilocybin and 5-MeO-DMT have been shown to induce states of profound awe, ego dissolution, and reconfigured sense of time and space. For example, I really enjoy that the idea of the Last Supper might have been a hidden teaching of divinity through an ethnogenic experience, a carefully orchestrated ritual that combined specific botanical extracts like Syrian rue and acacia in order to induce a shared mystical state among its participants, with cultural history being taught from ancient Gnostic traditions that were prevalent during the times. These experiences, measured in clinical studies, often lead to mystical experiences that cause lasting increases in openness, empathy, and overall well being. Now, it's not without possible consequences, such as Jesus describing his sweat becoming like drops of blood, but it sounds oddly like a mystical experience gone wrong. Modern neuroscience has begun to map neural correlates of mystical experience. And one key finding is that temporary suspension of the brain's default mode network, a constellation of interconnected brain regions associated with self referential thinking and maintenance of the ego. When the DMN goes down, as it does during deep meditation or under the influence of psychedelics, individuals report a loss of personal identity and feeling of unity with the cosmos. This phenomenon, described by researchers, provides a biological basis for the intense transformative feelings of oneness and awe found in the biblical accounts. It's essential to emphasize that while science can explain some of the mechanisms behind these experiences, it does not capture the profound, ineffable quality of awe. The fact that mystical experiences can be induced by pharmacologically influenced processes that cause divine encounters suggests that they occupy a unique space in the intersection of biology and spirituality. Whether interpreted as divine revelation or a powerful neurochemical event, the impact remains the same. Such experiences have the capacity to fundamentally reorient our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. Awe is a transformative force that reshapes our inner landscape. When we experience awe, whether through majestic natural vista, an encounter with art, or a profound mystical experience, our sense of self expands. We feel a connection to something larger than ourselves, and this can lead to lasting changes in our personality and values. Awe challenges our visual frame of reference, forcing us to re examine our priorities and to embrace a deeper, more expansive vision of life. Empirical studies have shown that moments of awe are associated with increased feelings of humility, gratitude, and interconnectedness. And researchers have demonstrated that awe can reduce stress and foster a sense of community. The profound effect of awe on our perception cannot be overstated. By breaking down the barriers of the self, awe opens us up to the possibility of a greater purpose. It is this capacity that instills meaning and that has made mystical experiences central to many spiritual traditions. In our modern world, where traditional religious frameworks are often questioned, the direct experience of awe remains one of the most profound and potent antidotes to nihilism. It reminds us that even in the face of an indifferent universe, there is a hidden order and beauty that can inspire us to strive for something greater, a personal and collective evolution towards the omega point. Mystical encounters, whether experienced by Moses, Paul, or Ezekiel, or through modern means, serve as powerful reminders that awe is transformative, life altering emotion. They invite us to see beyond the limitations of our everyday perceptions and to engage with a reality that is infinitely richer and more interconnected than we might imagine. While science can illuminate the neural mechanisms behind these experiences, it's the lived, ineffable quality of awe that ultimately reshapes our hearts and minds. Embracing this transformative potential is essential if we're going to navigate our modern world with clarity, purpose, and resilience. As we move forward, we may continually seek out and cultivate moments of awe that challenge us to grow, to let us go, and to build a future imbued with meaning. Without awe, life can feel small and mechanical. With it, life becomes vast, mysterious, and filled with possibility. And throughout this episode, we've explored the foundations of well-being. We looked at how wisdom, gratitude, awe, and deliberate action shape a meaningful and fulfilling life. It's complex and multifaceted. The practices that lead to flourishing are remarkably consistent across time, cultures, and scientific research. We began with wisdom. It's the master virtue. It's that ability to apply the right virtue to the right problem at the right time. And unlike other virtues, which can be harmful in excess or deficiency, wisdom is always beneficial the greater that it is in our lives. We then explored the core pillars of well being, practices that have been discovered, rediscovered, and refined across cultures and modern science. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's 11 of them, and I imagine that would be boring at this point. But I want to say that it is important for us to reflect on those areas that can help us grow in our well being. And then finally, we examined awe. It's that force that expands our sense of self and it humbles our ego and it reorients us towards the vast, interconnected reality that we are a part of. The pursuit of wisdom, awe, gratitude, and resilience, it's a way of life. These principles aren't abstract theories regulated to the pages of philosophy. They're actionable today with daily practices that shape our reality. True meaning doesn't come from passively waiting for purpose to fall in your lap. It emerges from deliberate engagement with the world, from the choices you make every day, from the relationships you build, and from the constant effort to rise above and become a better person. In essence, meaning and well being are cultivated through continuous mindful practice. Whether it's choosing to express gratitude in the face of adversity, harnessing the power of awe to broaden your perspective, or embrace resilience when confronted with setbacks, these practices build a stronger mind and a more fulfilled life. They empower you to move beyond fleeting moments of insight and transform them into a sustained dynamic force that propels you forward. In our next episode, we'll dive into the personal journey through suffering and the path towards inner healing. We'll explore how pain and trauma, whether stemming from acute events or long term emotional wounds, are not just inevitable, but also essential catalysts for transformation. So, again, thanks for joining me on this journey and adventure. I'm glad you're here. I look forward to our next encounter, and good luck on your own journey.